Hey friends, thanks for clicking on this video and joining in on what is a continuing conversation regarding keeping your powder in place with a flintlock. Okay, and I'm basically doing this because I'm making a rebuttal to a commenter. And before I get into the comment, I just want to let everybody know, for 42 years of my life, I lived inside of a closed, pretty much closed, religious cult, Jehovah's Witnesses. The only friends that I was really allowed to have were fellow Jehovah's Witnesses, because that's how cults work. They isolate you. And Jehovah's Witnesses are known for their door-to-door preaching work, so it makes it appear they're out into the community. They're really not, because that door-to-door preaching work is part of the cult identity, and it's a control mechanism driven by fear. Okay, basically the fear is if you don't please God, you're not going to get into the paradise earth that we're promised. Okay, but that's a long discussion. It's efficient enough for me to say that in 2012, my wife and I woke up from that cult. And for the past 11, 12 years, we have immersed ourselves into cult identity, cult technique, cult languages, and we've become pretty efficient at it. And I also have to say that when people leave a cult, the cult identity doesn't always leave them. You can still see residual traces, and I admit it myself. There's some things in my personality, because it's been so ingrained, it's difficult for me to get away from. But within a cult, you are taught to use certain techniques, and especially as one of Jehovah's Witnesses going from door to door. You're taught argumentative techniques. And although you're not taught specifically what they are, such as a red herring. See, even though in my door-to-door work I threw in a red herring, I didn't realize what a red herring was. Or straw man argumentation, or deflecting. Okay? These are techniques that anybody in any cult is taught, because these techniques are designed to keep you within one certain mind frame and to extinguish critical thought, critical thinking, and or questioning authority. Okay? Now, I understand that some people do this stuff without even recognizing what they may be doing. But I do recognize it, because like I said, I've spent a decade plus studying it and understanding it. And there's a psychologist out there, I won't mention a name, because the very thing, he was in the Moonies, and he was like number 2 in the entire organizational structure. He woke up, he became a psychologist, and then he wrote a book. And now, this very day, he's back to employing cult techniques. See? Because he's making a lot of friggin' money at it. See? So there's a lot of money associated with this also. But the thing is he did come out with something that was very valuable, and it's called the BITE model. B-I-T-E. And if you're not sure if you're in a cult or not, then apply the BITE model. B stands for behavior. If what you're involved with is controlling your behavior, you might be in a cult. The I stands for information. If they're controlling the information, you might be in a cult. And they might do that by saying, well, why would you question, the authority of the church? Why go to another source to question the authority? See? And it's subtle things like this. The T stands for thought control. Okay, now this is going to play in a little bit further. Okay, I'll show you how that thought control works. Okay, and the E is emotional control. So if you can use those 4 identifying markers, and yes, there are others out there, just research it. But if you can identify those 4 markers within the organization that you're associated with, you just might be in a cult. Now, with that being said, cults can be controlled by one person or a group of people, like the Jehovah's Witnesses. They have a governing body. The Mormons have a governing body. Seventh-day Adventists have a governing body. So it's not just one person controlling the group or the mass. It's a group. But one person can be a cult all onto himself. Charles Manson, prime example of somebody using cult manipulation to control a smaller number of people. Well, some of the things that you might want to be cautious of in any community that you're involved in, whether it's a Facebook group, whether it's making videos, or things like that, people can, without really recognizing what they're doing, they could be employing cult techniques. Okay? And I'll give you an example, and some people are probably not going to like this, but it's a good example within the black powder, DIY, homemade gunpowder community. Okay? We have someone out here, and you'll recognize it, and I don't know whether this person does it to this day or not, because I quit watching his videos. Okay? But I do see his clickbait thumbnails come up. Okay? But if you end your videos with, well, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't like it, then go make your own damn video and grin. Okay, that right there is loaded language. Because if somebody like myself decided to go and try the 77-13-10 formula and I defeated it, then that person is going to have in his mind, well, he went and made his own damn video, so he must think what I did sucked. And then they go and leave a negative comment such as, well, you changed your formula, you changed the formula, and this is just confirmation bias. See, they can't handle the fact that somebody challenged them. But they're the ones that said, then go make your own damn video. See? So, whether that's done on purpose, whether he realized what he's doing or not, I'm not going to speak to that. But I recognize the technique. Okay? Because that technique also stops people from going out and making their own damn video showing something different. Okay? How many other black powder shooters have you seen go out there and challenge the 77-13-10? No, everything that I see, even to one recently, well, I make my own homemade black powder and I'm using 77-13-10. I've probably seen that a dozen or so more times. Now, there's the control of the behavior in the information. See? Because that information is getting spread so that everybody thinks in this community that that's the end-all, be-all right there. And it's just simply not. But I recognize the technique. Okay? Now, getting to this commenter. Okay? Because I see in this comment absolute loaded language and an absolute deflection from the topic. But then this poster tries to bring it back at the very end, and he fails miserably. Okay? This is the comment after watching, and I don't even know if he watched the whole video, see? But I want you friends to focus on something so that when you see comments and you think that you're responding and you're thinking you're having a conversation with a person, you may not be. You may be having a conversation with somebody that understands difficult technique and how to deflect in or how to shut down a conversation, such as my mother used to piss me off big time. We'd have a conversation, she'd bring out a point, I'd bring out another point, she'd bring out a point, I'd bring out another point, and then at the very end she'll go, well, let's just agree to disagree. That comes from a person that no longer has a position to stand on when it comes to an argumentative point. But what that does also is that shuts you down. See? That's designed to shut you down more than it is that they don't have any more speaking points. Okay? And so anyhow, going on, I live in the Pacific Northwest in the rainforest. I've been shooting flintlock since 1972. So that right there is loaded language. See, I've been shooting flintlock since 1972. I know more about this than you do. That's what's being projected. That's called loaded language. But if you don't understand these techniques, and if this person doesn't even realize that they're employing this technique, but someone who understands it can easily pick out what's going on here. Okay? So he goes on. If the frizzen is fitted properly to the plan, you don't have to worry about that, even in the driving rain. The topic of the video was keeping your powder in the pan. Okay? But here's the problem. As a Jehovah's Witness, when I went and did my door-to-door work, somebody presented a question or a challenge to me, I would say, qualify that statement. And that person would be like, you could almost see them thinking internally, oh shit, how do I qualify what I just did, what I just stated? See? So that right there is also designed to shut people down. That's why you see me from time to time on this channel. I'll say, well, let me give you a broader context. Let me qualify that better. Because I understand what those words do. Okay, so that's why I go out of my way to qualify stuff as much as I can. Okay, but the whole context of that video was to keep your powder in the pan without it moving from side to side. And at some point in that video, I took the lock and stuck it up here. So even in the rain, when I carry my gun, I keep it down and I keep my lock underneath my arm, or you could use a cow's knee. Okay? But that was the only thing that this commenter focused on. And he used it as a deflection. Okay? So he goes on. The majority of flintlocks are not properly tuned and timed and fitted. Most amateur gunsmiths, speaking about me, don't have the knowledge or the experience to do it. So that right there, in a broad sense, just diminished everybody's ability to do this stuff on their own and at home. Now, I will tell you, when you buy a lock, like from L&R or this one from Siler, you will get this with the frizzen already hardened. Okay? If I would have taken my Siler lock at the time, and I showed in that video, there was a gap right here where I was losing powder and the powder wasn't staying in place. And I showed it up through the window and you could see light through it. If I were, which I could have very easily done, all you would have had to do was to put the screw in and put the frizzen in place. And you could take you want to take the hammer and the springs and everything off just to be cautious. But what I could have done is heated up right here and then taken a pair of pliers and bent it down so that that would have closed more tight across the face of the pan. Okay? What that would have done, and here's another word that scares people away from stuff, geometry. See, these have a very specific geometry, and if you don't get the geometry just right, you're going to ruin your lock. Well, yes, when you put pressure on this to seal your pan, you're going to change the geometry of the frizzen. But look at something here. Look at the geometry. Do you see how the back of this frizzen fits up against this back wall, which is actually basically a stopping point? Do you see how that frizzen is right up against that? Okay, so changing the geometry in this situation would have been nothing, because all you would have had to have done was keep your pair of pliers right here so that it doesn't move, put a little bit of heat right here, and just move this back so that the bottom of the frizzen is touching that back wall. Geometry's right on. Be careful of loaded language that is designed to diminish your ability, and using words like most amateur gunsmiths don't have the knowledge or the experience. But see, again, reflecting back to, I've been shooting flintlocks since 1972, so I got the experience. Do you see the loaded language? Do you see the circular reasoning in this? I do. That's why a couple of videos back I started answering some of his questions, and I saw right away where this was going, because he accused me of not understanding clickbaiting on YouTube. That's when I realized that this poster is wasting my time. Okay? So I'm done with it. And that's why I'm doing this publicly, hoping that he'll realize that I recognize what he's doing. Okay? So are you going to sit here and also accuse somebody like Mike Bellevue of being an amateur gunsmith when he takes, say, an 1860 Army sheriff's model, does all the relief cutting and fits and times the cylinder so that 1860 Army can now shoot cartridges in a cartridge cylinder? Are you going to call him an amateur? He's got the experience, but the difference between amateur and professional is, are you making money at what you're doing? That's the only difference. See, I've been a drummer for a lot of my life, most of my life, okay? But only once or twice have I ever been paid to be a backup drummer because of the cult I was in. You can't be doing that because that's part of the devil's world, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You don't want to get involved with that because you're going to fall into a trap. So I shut down that part of my life because of cult control language based on fear. See? But the very fact that I got paid for 2 paying gigs, I could say I'm a professional drummer because I made money at what I was doing. That's the only difference between amateur and professional. Okay? And granted, not everybody has the tools to do things, but you can go on YouTube. That's the beauty of YouTube this day and age, is that you can go on YouTube and learn how to do anything. In fact, it's probably going to put a lot of gunsmiths right out of business. And it's not just gunsmiths. It's a whole lot of other people that used to hide secrets that are being put out of business. It's all in front of us now. Everything that you need to learn to do is right on YouTube. But be careful of these type of posters, because all they're doing is they're really reflecting a superior knowledge by saying stuff like the majority of flintlocks are not properly tuned. Well, if this lock was not properly tuned when I ordered it and bought it, I should have sent the damn thing back. And if you've got a lock that's not properly working, you should send it back too, instead of paying some gunsmith 8 hours. See, because he goes on to say here, after a lock is completely built and assembled, it can easily take 8 hours to tune and time it to perfection. So, let's just say, for instance, this L&R lock right here. I bought it, sparked really good, put it on the gun, works just fine. Let's just say, for instance, that I now had to spend another 8 hours worth of labor to a gunsmith. I only paid, if I remember, at $168 for this lock, and this has been like 20 years ago now. Now, can you imagine spending that kind of money and then handing this over to a locksmith and say, now tune it for me, and then pay him 8 hours to tune and time it to perfection? See, now you're going beyond the word geometry, because when you get a lock like this, all of the geometry should already have been resolved. And if it's not, for the love of God, send it back. Because it's going to cost you more to take that to a gunsmith and have him time it and tune it to perfection. And then he concludes with, no JB Weld. You see how he took my demonstrating, in a rainy weather, I just keep it up underneath my arm and I keep the barrel down. He went from that to all of this bullshit and then right back to no JB Weld. The purpose of the JB Weld, as I demonstrated and showed in that video, was to keep your powder in place. Not to keep it dry from driving rain. In fact, if you're out in the driving rain with a flintlock, I got to question whether you're really a sane person or not. Because I don't know anybody that's going to be out hunting big game in a driving rain. For the most part, game ain't going to be moving around. Now, you might find herds of elk like Clay Hayes does, but you look at what he's done. He's gone after elk in the piss porous of snow weather, and he gets ready to shoot, and guess what? The lock doesn't go off because he got moisture in it. You're going to sit here and tell me a guy like Clay Hayes, that's got all the money that God has ever given a single human being, Solomon included, doesn't have a perfectly timed lock, a perfectly sealed lock? It still happens. It really does. But it's commenters like this that I can understand cult technique, cult language, loaded language, deflecting, throwing in a straw man argument, even a red herring. Timing and tuning these locks had nothing to do with what I was showing regarding the JB Weld. Now, with that being said, moving on. Not every lock is created equal. Okay? And back in the day, let me get a ruler here. Back in the day, gunpowder is not what it is today. Today's gunpowder is more refined than it was, say, back in the 1700s when they was using a lock like this. Now, if you look at the length of this pan, okay, look at the length of that pan. I'm going to measure that in millimeters. That pan from this inside edge right here to the edge that goes up against the barrel is 2 millimeters. Okay, that pan, I'm going to put my finger right at 2 millimeters, is that long. That's an awful long pan for 4F to be moving around, especially if you've got 1 or 2 grains in there without something to keep the powder in place. Now, going on to this lock that's part of my Frankenstein gun, you can see that this lock is completely designed different. Okay, I'll point that out as soon as I give you the length of the pan. 17 millimeters. Now, looking at that and listening to the numbers, you would think, well, there's not that much of a difference. There actually is. And what that difference is this. This pan on this L&R lock, which is, typically used on a Hawkins style gun, typically, the back edge of this pan slopes dramatically. Okay, so if you put 1 or 2 grains of powder in here and close the frizzen and you move it around, it basically self-levels the powder. This pan doesn't. So if all your powder ends up on this far end, that's where it's going to stay. But on this particular lock, because there's one hell of a slope right here, that powder is going to naturally slope back down to its resting position. Now, look at the underside of this particular frizzen cover. You can see that there's a ridge here, okay? I don't know how well the camera's picking it up, but it's there, so that when you close this lid, that ridge sets in the center of the pan, or it sets, you know, it sets over the pan, so that there's a clear ridge between here, the seat, and where the powder is. So that's a huge difference in these locks, okay? Now, I'm going to turn the camera around because I want to show you, friends, something subtle. And you may not pick it up because it's difficult to do. So as you can see, I have 2 grains of each different types of powder here. Here's 2 grains of elephant, 2F. And if you look at that 2F, you should be able to see that the granules, the grains, are more consistent in size. Okay? And if your eye can pick up the amount, 2 grains, I'm going to make a point. Here is 2 grains of Goex. And if you look at the granule sizes, there's a lot of small, tiny pieces in it, like right here. Okay? And if you look at the edge, you can see smaller pieces like right there. And that goes throughout this Goex 2F. Now, here's elephant 4F. Huge difference in the powder, okay? Here is Swiss 3F. Okay? This is also 2 grains. And they're pretty consistent. And here's some Schutzen 3F also. Now, once again, I don't know how well your eye is going to be able to pick it up. But if you focus and look at it real closely, remember, all of these are weighed out on my scale. And I got another 2 grains weighed right there to further demonstrate something. Excuse me, to qualify something. But if you look real close at this, you can see that there's more 4F than anything else. But you can also see 2 grains. There's less Swiss 3F than there is of Schutzen 3F. That's because of the weight of the graphite. Now, I know a lot of people do, and I do it myself without any issues. I will shoot 3F in my flash pan. I don't have a problem with that. The gun goes off every single time. I have no issues. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about looking at the volume of the powder in front of you. All of these weigh 2 grains, and you can clearly see that there's more Goex 2F. There's probably about an equal amount of elephant 2F, but you can clearly see that there's a whole bunch more powder with the 4F elephant and a whole bunch more powder with the 3F Schutzen. Try to learn the difference of what you're looking at. And I know it takes a keen eye to be able to do this. But if you train your eye and think critically, you can actually see it. So, if you're going to go with Swiss 3F in your flash pan, or Schutzen 3F in your flash pan. You're going to get more powder in your flash pan with the Schützen 3F than you will with the Swiss 3F. And unfortunately, Elephant's out of business, but looking at the 2F Elephant that I do have, and the GoEx Elephant is much, much more consistent in grain sizes. And that's what's in this pan right here. And I'm going to put that in one of the locks and show you it still moves around. So I went ahead and turned on the overhead light so that you can see maybe a little bit clearer. You can see that this pan has a huge slope. And those of you that have got this particular lock from L&R, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay? And back in the day, they already resolved that issue. But I'm going to take 2 grains of Elephant 2F. I'm going to put it in the pan. And I'm going to put my finger up against the wall that would be the gun and show you where that powder sets. And hopefully you can see that and the camera's picking it up well enough. Okay. Now once again, this gun likes 3F, or this lock. I'm going to close the lid. Okay, and leave everything to this far side. Okay, and then go back this way. Open it up, and you can see that that powder has pretty much self-leveled. Okay, because of the way it's designed. Now, this was perfectly timed and tuned, which this lock is. Okay. Let me get that paper plate and I want to show you. So what I'm going to do now, look at that, all that 2F poured out. Why? Because you've got nothing keeping the powder in place. Now granted, this is a good sealed lock, and you're not going to be pouring powder out like this, but the thing is that when you hold your gun like this, that powder is going to go right down to that touch hole and give you a delay of ignition. Okay, so that's one of the other reasons you want to keep your powder in place. Okay, now I'm going to take the same 2F, because back in the day, gunpowder wasn't as refined as it is today. And just give me a moment to reweigh this just to make sure. I lost a little bit. Let me compensate. Here we go. I'll put that in this lock. Let's see, make sure I don't spill it. Level it out like I would in my gun. And that's what it looks like. Okay. Now I'm going to close the lid that I've already done the work on to keep the powder in place. Now as you can see, because 2F is much larger in size, the lock is not sitting perfectly flat. Okay. So now I'm going to move everything around. Okay, and then hopefully without spilling anything, open the lock back up. Oh, look at that. The powder's still in the same place. That's my qualifier. So once again, friends, if you glean something from this, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up and share it with the bestest of buds. And don't let anybody diminish your ability to overcome a problem by using frightening words. Words that are designed to make you question your ability to do things. And be careful, because it's not just in this community that stuff like this happens. It happens all the time on any subject that you wish to look up. These type of commenters are there. So just be cautious and don't engage with these type of people. Now I know somebody in the comment section is going to say, well, why are you engaging? I'm using this to help you people learn and understand cult mechanism, cult language, so that you can avoid this trap. If somebody would have taught me this, you know, when my mom and dad first started studying the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses, I wouldn't have wasted 42 years of my life in a go nowhere, do nothing, false prophecy cult. See? Alrighty. Everybody have a great day. Bye.